Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon, and I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies at Charles Darwin University. Welcome to Outrider 47, Headhunters. This Outrider comes via request, two separate requests actually, from Michael and from Annie. Both of you are courageous, and I thank you so much for sending me those pretty intricate, pretty complicated emails with this request. And look, for about 10 years, I've had a file going, collecting up data sets and information about headhunters, about education, consultants in particular. And so this is part of my Clostrapolitan University book that I'm writing at the moment. So when I got Michael and Annie's request, I thought, you know what, it's time. Over the last 10 years, I could have sort of done this particular vlog at any particular point, but there's something significant post the pandemic at this juncture in the history of our universities to talk about the headhunters. So I'm thrilled that we're here. It can be quite a horrific and damaging and destructive topic, but together, let's talk through the light and shade of headhunters. Now, I want to start with two horror stories. They are my horror stories, they're my stories, so they're mine to tell. And they're both absolutely real and changed the trajectory of my life. So the first happened 13 years ago when I was in Canada, and a job was advertised in an Australian university, and they'd hired a Melbourne-based headhunter, and he was what my 96-year-old father Kevin would describe as a silvertail. Very posh. Now, luckily, I've moved through some pretty posh silvertail environments in my life, but he was, I believe, the most pretentious man that I have ever met. And noting the difference in time zone between Victoria in Australia and Ontario in Canada, he insisted on maintaining what he described as his lifelong function, which is to sit in a Melbourne-based coffee shop between 9 and 11 and answer some emails and make some phone calls. So he would arrive in the office at 11 a.m. Great job if you can get it. So therefore, any meeting with me had to be after 11 a.m. Now, of course, I'm in Ontario, and that was deep in the night, deep in the Canadian night. And of course, I was teaching. I was lecturing at 8 a.m. in the morning. I had a teaching and research career. But I kept meeting with this guy, and there's no doubt that he certainly strung me along. He was keeping me all a bit desperate, a bit on edge, wanting to please him. And by about meeting two with this gentleman, I started to feel like Leia in Return of the Jedi. You know that scene where Jabba has a bit of a lick of Leia? That's how it felt. And these meetings stretched over such a length of time, and I got no sense about how the process was going, if there was a process. He just kept on meeting with me. That, look, it took so long that another job came up, I applied for it, and I got it. And then Jabba organised another meeting with me, to which I declined it, I refused. And when he got very agitated, saying, "Tara, the appointment process has reached a crucial juncture," I simply said, "I'm sorry, I've got myself another job. This process took so long and I didn't know what was happening, so I've accepted another job." Now, he was absolutely horrified and wrote a series of pretty abusive emails, but then the chair of the university panel emailed me and said, "Look, Tara, we're about to move to interviews. What happened?" And I said, "Thank you so much. I wish the university well, but obviously this process has gone on and on and on. It's been a pretty abusive environment. Here are some of the emails I've received, and I've just decided to make a different choice, but I wish the university well." So that's story one. Story two. Let's invert this. So I'm in Australia and I'm applying for a job in Canada, and we're dealing with a Canadian headhunter this time. Now, I applied for this post in absolute good faith for one of the northern provinces of Canada, and I've always had a big interest in the northern provinces in particular, but this headhunter was based in, of course, Vancouver. And he started having supposed meetings with me, but it became very clear these meetings were each actually interviews. And through this process, I had 37 meetings/interviews with this gentleman over 7 months. And every meeting I had with him, I hoped it would be the last. Obviously, when you have meeting 1, you think that's meeting 1 and on we go. When you have meeting 10, you think, right, well, this has got to be the last one. You just don't know. And then, of course, I discovered why the university was using the headhunter in this way. They were originally going to make the appointment before the long summer break in North America. So they were getting on with it and hustling it through, and that's great. But then a decision was made, no, let's start the appointment after the long summer break. So this meant that the headhunter now had a new task to keep the fish with a hook in our mouth and keep us engaged. So the trouble is, in a process like this, if you start knowing there's going to be 37 meetings, you never start. You just go, yeah, nah. But at meeting 1, you think, right, well, let's progress with this. Anyway, I got to the interview 7 months later. I arrived after a 22-hour flight, and there was a note at this pretty tacky motel room reception saying, Tara, you must not leave the motel over the weekend so that you don't disadvantage the other candidates by looking around the landscape, looking around the campus, looking around the environment. And I replied via email, I'm sorry, but I am going to need to get groceries. I'm here on a Friday night. The interview process starts on Monday. There is nothing around here. I will have to find and walk to a supermarket. Now, the university was very apologetic when they found out, and the headhunter was a bit embarrassed, but that didn't really stop him, because he then proceeded to keep on meeting with me after the interview was completed as well. It went on and on and on, and once more, I just applied for another job and got it and stopped this process. And of course, he then sent me a quite horrified email going, why have you pulled out? And I went, 37 meetings. That's why I've pulled out. And the question you've always got to ask yourself, and this is the meta question of our gig today, is if a university or their proxies would treat a human in this way during the appointment process, what are they going to do when you actually work for them? So they're my stories, but let's now talk about Tara's 5 maxims when you come to engage with a headhunter. So as universities have been increasingly corporatised, they've borrowed a series of terms and languages and protocols from corporations, particularly the banking and finance capitalism sector. The irony is, of course, though, that in universities in the last 10 years, the HR, or the people and culture section of our universities, has expanded enormously. There was a great Times Higher article exploring the growth in people and culture departments in universities around the world. So at the very point that there's never been more staff to manage the appointment process, the functions of universities are being outsourced to private corporate providers. So this means that public universities are paying private headhunters to hire their staff. Isn't that interesting? So let's look at the language used by headhunters. I can't make this up, so I'm going to quote this for you directly. So here is one of them, Uni Recruit. Pretty clear. Quote, we take a proactive role in finding the right person for the job, leveraging our networks through the sector to reach highly qualified candidates around the globe. We understand our clients' needs as only specialists can. We are agile and responsive to client needs, meaning we get outstanding results quickly with a thorough but flexible recruitment process that moves as fast as our clients. We stand behind a 12-month guarantee on all our new appointments. End of quote. Wow. Now, isn't it interesting that they're guaranteeing another human being's decisions? People have a right in the first year to stay or leave, but they guarantee that that person won't. How do they know? Okay, but you can see the language: agile, responsive, flexible, yuck, yuck, yuck. Okay, let's do one more. Harris Search Associates, quote, "We understand the distinct needs of higher education, its transformative impact, and appreciate that leadership of an academic enterprise," what a phrase, academic enterprise, "is more challenging than it's ever been. This creates a demand for all sorts of new leadership roles at all executive levels to balance the diverse mission of academics, note the plural, academics, research, and ever-changing educational issues." End of quote. If it's possible to put in one more buzzword into that phrasing, I'm uncertain where it would go. But with all these leaders supposedly being hired by these headhunters, who's doing the actual work? Hashtag asking for a friend. Okay, so academic headhunters, as we've just seen, they're fueled by neoliberalism, but it is more serious than that with the quirky buzzwords, because we're not just talking about platitudes here or cliches. These firms can and will control your life and your destiny, and also they are shaping the future trajectory of international higher education. They matter a lot. So academic headhunters are an example of reintermediation in disintermediated times. So what that means is, through digitisation and deterritorialisation, it means that we can contact people directly, so these chains are lost in the space between a producer and a consumer, right? So if you want to write an email to the Vice-Chancellor, you can. If you want to write to a celebrity on Instagram, you can. That's disintermediation. So links are being lost, much more close relationship. Yet at this very point, when a university can directly hire a human being, so have a fully disintermediated process, the neoliberal university is adding layers and barriers back into the process. So headhunters are reintermediating the employment process. Why are they doing this? Great question, many answers. One is that the headhunters have to do the dirty work of the universities. Remember, I'm a very experienced academic. I'm very old. And I've been married to two very, very experienced academics through the full spectrum of disciplines. Me in the high humanities, my late husband Steve Redhead, fully in the professions, in law, and of course the wonderful Jamie Quitten in experimental physics. So that group of people, we've seen a lot. And at the point where transparency and accountability has never been easier to confirm for a university or any organisation, headhunters exist to hide, to add barriers, to shield the powerful from scrutiny. Okay, so from this palette of experience and expertise and the definitions I've put in place, let's quickly configure 5 maxims for you today that may transform your relationship with headhunters. Can I say, this is rare for me in all the damn vlogs I've recorded to actually offer sort of advice like this. But can I say, if I knew these 5 maxims 20, 25 years ago, my life would be different. So see if they're useful. Put them on if they fit. If not, discard them, but have a think. Okay, headhunters, first one. The goal of headhunters is to create a field for the university. Crucial. Now, we live in a very toxic period of life and universities where there's sort of bullying and abuse and harassment and nastiness on pretty well a daily basis, okay? But from this moment of brutality and toxicity, a headhunter magically sends you an email or sends you a message on LinkedIn, and they're nice to you. They recognise how great you are and acknowledge your career, and that's astonishing. So someone's noticed us. Isn't this exciting? Isn't this lovely? But of course, headhunters are paid to make you feel good about yourself. They exist for one reason, and that is to get the university a field. They are paid to ensure that every single job has a competitive field, so a good choice can be made. So they will be nice to you. They will flatter you. They will treat you well. And they're doing that so they can report a long list of possibilities to the university. And it looks therefore like they've done an expansive search, when of course what they've done is they've put a few keywords into LinkedIn and started to contact people, right? Don't be flattered. Yes, it's an opportunity. Say yes. Treat it like that. But headhunters are not heroes that are rescuing you from your toxic workplace. They are people who are paid to deliver a field to the university, and they flatter you to get paid. They are paid to get a field. That is their actual job. 2, oh my goodness me, headhunters can't win you the job, but they can lose you the job. Oh yes. This is a life lesson. If I knew this 25 years ago, this one really would have changed my life. Okay. Headhunters are not academics. They are employment consultants for a university sector that's lost its way. But they matter. They matter enormously. So we must not minimise or marginalise them. They are what and who we are dealing with pretty well on a weekly basis if you're trying to get a new job. But if you want a job, then you're going to be dealing with a headhunter increasingly. So you're going to have to get through them to get to a job. Headhunters, though, can't get you the job, but they can lose you the job. Therefore, every meeting, every email, every phone conversation matters, because every phone conversation, every Zoom conversation can lose you the job. So present your game face every single time. Confidence, 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 excitement for the role. Yes, yes, yes. Do not raise a single problem. Do not ask any questions. After you've been offered the job, then you can ask your questions. At this point, no doubt, just pristine confidence. Yes, excited, ready for this job. Boom. So the goal with the headhunter, what you've got to try and do is keep yourself in the game. They can remove you from the game. They can remove you from any consideration for this job. So therefore, remember, every single interaction matters. 3, headhunters exist to keep you engaged. Right, the role of headhunters is to sort of keep you active, wanting the job, sort of involved in the process continually, even when problems exist in the university like delays or rubbish or nepotism or all sorts of issues that may emerge in the creation of a committee, right? So they mask all of that stuff that's happening within the university to keep focused on you and keeping you engaged. Now remember my example of 37 meetings with a Canadian headhunter. Now, no one starts this process thinking, I'm going to do basically 37 interviews with a guy. You never would start like that. But their role is to keep you engaged, hooked, keep you hooked so that you're excited by the role. But they also then have to sort of fill in spaces, right? Because they're waiting for the committee to organise themselves. Okay, and so they sort of ask you questions about your career, your CV. Then they move to the vision statement, the strategic plan of the university. On and on and on it goes. And as it goes on, smaller and smaller things are talked about as being terribly important to keep you engaged. And of course, the whole role of this is to make you a bit paranoid, a bit frightened, a bit worried, what's going on, keep you unstable. But once they've got their field, the second role of a headhunter is to make sure that you stay hooked, that you stay connected, that the field is delivered to the university. And of course, noting the state of most universities at the moment, getting that appointment committee together and organised and agreeing that they're ready to make a decision, that's a challenge in itself. So the headhunter exists to provide this sheen to the university, to pretend, oh yes, everything is normal, everything is fantastic, and to keep you as the fish hooked so you just don't go, yeah, nah, I'm out, girlfriend. They have to stop you doing that. So we manage the headhunters doing this. We do by running multiple applications. So the key is never apply for one job so it's all a bit earnest and a bit frightening and a bit desperate with one person. Apply for 5 jobs, apply for 10 jobs, apply for 15 jobs, apply for 20 jobs, because the goal at the end is you can actually make a choice about a job. Now you may only get one, and that's cool, but if you get a couple, you get 3, you can then make a choice, and that's the spot where we all need to be. The first university that sorts themselves out basically gets you, and that's great. But of course, don't tell one headhunter about the other headhunter. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Play the game. And remember, the outcome of the game is that you are offered multiple jobs and you make a choice. That's what we're aiming for. And remember that that's not the headhunter's role. The headhunter's role is to create a field and then make sure that the field and the shortlist stay with them as they move to the appointment process. 4, headhunters do the inelegant and deeply problematic testing. Right. So in the old days, selection committees used to read a CV, interpret and understand a CV, contact referees, and make an appointment. Pretty straightforward stuff. Now, because we have a group of leaders in our universities that don't teach, don't research, are not involved in education as a process and practice for citizenship, they really don't grasp the shape of an academic career, particularly with authenticity and integrity. So they are now requiring, it is funny, but it's also horrific, because they're not exploring teaching and research and understanding how they read that and rank that and interpret that. They're now constructing all these alternative data points that have nothing to do with teaching and research, but of course are important for the committee because they're not reading the CV, they need other information. Okay, so this is a recent thing. It's certainly been happening increasingly in the last 10 years. I find this very, very troubling, to be frank. So what's happening is headhunters are putting us all through unbelievable testing processes. Now remember, we're applying to a university. We have degrees. The role of a university is to teach and accredit degrees, right? That's what we're doing. So we have degrees, we're involved in a university that delivers and graduates degrees, fantastic. But what's significant is that the leadership now is discounting those degrees and wanting these interesting alternative data points. So what's happening at the moment is we're asked to do all sorts of, what do we call them? Personality tests? Feels a bit like, those Facebook quizzes where they go, you're a Capricorn, who's your best zodiac match? Or, you load up a photograph and they go, Tara, what would you look like as a Viking? And basically it feels a bit like that. So it's these sort of weird personality tests. And then, of course, the multiple layers of, surprise, surprise, IQ tests. This is interesting, and I'll tell you one of my horrific ones. So I did one 8 years ago. It was timed, it was proctored from the United States, and the headhunter, of course, made an appointment to discuss the results of the IQ test. Oh, this is fantastic. So, of course, I supposedly received a score in the top 1% of people who had ever done this test. Now, I have zero interest in that result. IQ tests only show the ability to do IQ tests. I'm not bothered about them at all. But needless to say, the headhunter was terribly excited that I'd got a result in the top 1%. And she said, oh, the Vice-Chancellor was really surprised by your result. And I said, Okay. And I said, why was the Vice-Chancellor surprised by the result? And she sort of said, bubbling along, oh, look, he's an engineer and he didn't expect anyone from an arts background to do well in an IQ test. Came straight out, and then of course she realised what she'd said and she got a bit confused and a bit worried and all the rest of it, and I sort of laughed. It's a great story and I was always going to tell the story, and now I get an opportunity to tell this story. But the meta question you've got to ask of a Vice-Chancellor, who in this case was an engineer, is why did he make a decision to implement testing that he believed, wasn't correct, but he believed would disadvantage a group of candidates from a particular disciplinary background? So this is homology, this is cognitive bias, but also can you see how the bulk of people who graduate from an arts, humanities degree, they're women? And so that's a great example of how supposed meritocracy, hi Jules, how meritocracy can be structured in a way that simply reinforces cognitive bias. Okay, so be aware that you're going to have to do really, really, really terrible testing processes. And this is horrific. I can't pretty this up for you. But we've got leadership that now require these very strange data sets. I'll also finish off this little bit by telling an absolutely traumatic story so you can understand the ruthlessness of what we're dealing with here. So I applied for a job, did the application, did a whole series of conversations with the headhunter, went to the interview, did 4 days of stakeholder events, returned from the interview, did another interview, did another presentation, met a series of other stakeholders. This was going on and on and on with the panel members, with the headhunter, with all sorts of people. And I was doing all of this, and then of course Steve Redhead died on March 8, 2018. And they'd got used to contacting me like I was a drug dealer. So they'd got used to, Tara, we need to talk to you. And, I would talk to them. Right? But of course, on the day that Steve died, surprisingly, I wasn't actually available for them because I was a little bit busy. And so what did they do? Well, they went to the Perth phone book and found my father, Kevin Brabazon's landline. He's old. He's still got a landline, bless him. He was 90 at the time. And they phoned Kevin to find me. Now, Kevin, 90, landline, man, picks up the phone. Now, we need to remember, of course, his son-in-law had died the night before. And those of you that know Kevin and Steve, Kevin loves Steve like his own son, right? So Kev was devastated at Steve's death. But anyway, Kev answered the phone to this headhunter, and they said to him, we've been trying to get in touch with Tara all day. And of course, he said, working class Australian bloke, her husband's just died, don't you? And the female headhunter kept going after that and actually said, we need her urgently to prepare because she's going to have to do a mock presentation to our university senate. So poor Kevin sent me the email on the day Steve died, email going, look, these randoms have phoned me and this is what they need. So of course I then wrote them an email on this day of death, and of course this story is connected with the death and will be until I die. So on this day, and I said, look, I've done interviews, I've done pre-interviews, I've done your testing. This has been going on for 4 months. And on the day that my husband dies, you contact a 90-year-old man so that I can do another mock presentation to your Senate. If you are behaving in this way, how could I ever work for the university? And so I pulled out. I think that was a right decision because they then went through the process again, and the gentleman they hired lasted 2 months and was removed because of a conflict of interest. And finally, 5, headhunters ask you the questions that the panel won't or can't ask. This is a big one. After all the processes, the shortlisting, the presentations, the testing, there is an increasing delay in the appointment process. In the old days, you'd finish stuff and they want to appoint you so you can start, right? But now there's these bizarre months where nothing seems to be occurring. And panels, because they are lacking the academic literacies to read and interpret and understand a proper career academic CV, are conservative and risk adverse. So they're needing a whole series of other really yucky questions to be answered. So after this Goffman-esque process is supposedly over, where everyone asks questions and score it, then of course the headhunter comes in and asks the unaskable questions. And these are questions about money, about spouses, about families, about capacities to live close to a workplace, about being flexible, whatever that might mean, and an early or quick start date. This is always the amusement for me. So they take 7 months, and then when they're ready to go, they need to know if you can start in 3.5 minutes. Funny as. Okay, so in universities, our panel members, and I'm on a lot of interview panels, we are strongly restricted about what questions we can ask. They're all choreographed for us. Here is the question, here is the supplemental, here is the score. That's it. But of course, after all of this formal process concludes now, an informal process commences. And the headhunter asks some pretty loaded and often some pretty dirty questions. And I've often been stunned by the ruthlessness and the cruelty of this particular moment in the appointment process. And what I'd ask, and I'm doing this now, is you judge a university by how they behave after the interview has occurred, right? Because if they're going to behave like this, what are they going to do when you're actually working for them? So if they don't have the courage to ask questions, and they're paying somebody to ask those questions, you've got to have a big think about that. So this is a dirty business, and you've got to decide how dirty you're going to be. Now, I'll give you one example of this process from Canada, and this one actually broke my heart. Mostly it's like, oh, look, it's capitalism, whatever. But this one did actually broke my heart because I did care deeply about this university. And so I'd moved through application process, all the headhunter staff, moved through the interview, the stakeholder staff, and I really loved this institution, and I loved the staff, and I loved the academics, I loved the students. I thought I would work there till the end of my career. I thought this was a ripper. And then the headhunter phoned me on my Saturday morning, so they're late Friday afternoon, and asked just one question: what's my current salary? And I told her, got nothing to hide. This is my current salary. Thanks. Now, 10 minutes, might have even been 8 minutes, but within 10 minutes of that phone call, I'd received an email from this lass saying my application would no longer be progressed. I was out of the process. So I'm pretty old. And so I then wrote to the panel, and of course this is a North American panel. They're large, they're representative, all bits of the university are there, so they're tremendous ways of being appointed because you get a good sense of who you're going to be working with. They're lovely. But of course I had all their email, and I've been emailing them and talking with them all and so forth. And so I emailed them and I said, colleagues, I've just had this incredibly short phone call with this lass. She asked my salary, I told her, and I've then received this email below. Now, colleagues, I didn't get the second question, which is, this is my current salary, what are you expecting in this post? To which my answer would have been, I don't care. I'm interested in the job, not the money. But I wasn't asked that question. So needless to say, the panel went completely bonkers. Everyone was emailing over what was the weekend then, and it was pretty feral. And it got to the point where the panel had to actually be removed and reorganised, reconstituted, because it was just people were so angry. And then, of course, they went on this new panel to hire a junior white man who was probably a bit cheaper, and of course that was a catastrophic failure. Okay, so what's happened here is they allowed a very junior member of a headhunter firm to ask a question, and it caused great damage to me, but also a great sadness for me, because this would have been a great moment for this university, for us to walk together to something rather spectacular. So, and by the way, yes, I'm still in touch with that panel and still work with the university in different ways. But it's a tragedy of my life. I look back on it and there is a regret there. So when I'm looking for work, colleagues, I mix this up a bit. You deal with the headhunters and, mostly they're pretty decent, kind people. Mostly they're doing their job that they've been hired to do. But I also try and make sure that I apply for work dealing with universities directly, because the universities that directly advertise, that shows confidence, it shows security, and it's often a much faster process. So these are tough times, but at least if you know the rules of the headhunter game, you can play by their rules, but you can also maintain your outcome, your goal. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.